Today, we're diving into a huge fight that is completely changing how we buy and sell our homes. It's a war being fought in boardrooms and state houses, and it all boils down to one simple but really important question.
Think about this for a second. The absolute perfect house for you is for sale right now, but you can't see it. You can't even find it online. It's basically invisible to you and almost every other buyer out there. This isn't just a hypothetical. It's the very real situation at the center of a huge debate over something called private listings.
So, to really get what's going on, we first need to pull back the curtain on this hidden market and talk about what exactly a private listing is. At its core, a private listing is just a property that isn't advertised to everybody. So instead of popping up on Zillow or the multiple listings service, which is that central database all the agents use, it's only marketed to a very small, sometimes exclusive circle of potential buyers. Yeah, this is the easiest way to think about it. It's like a VIP list for houses. Only a few select people even get the invitation to know it's for sale. And it's this idea of exclusivity that has two of the biggest players in real estate going head-to-head. And this isn't just some small disagreement. We're talking about a real battle between two absolute giants, the huge real estate portal Zillow and the country's #1 brokerage, Compass. And as you can probably guess, they see this whole thing from completely different perspectives. And what's so interesting is how this whole thing breaks down along their core beliefs. You've got Zillow over here arguing for total transparency. They say an open market is just fair for buyers and, it gets sellers the best price in the end. But then you have Compass, which is all about choice. They argue that a seller should have every right to decide how they market their own property and that Zillow is really just trying to protect its own powerful position in the market.
And they are not being quiet about it. Zillow put out a statement basically saying, hey, our whole company was built on the idea of transparency for consumers. So, of course, we're going to support laws that make sure everyone can see every listing and has a fair shot. They even point to data that suggests sellers often lose money when they don't list their homes publicly.
But Compass fires right back. A spokesperson for the company called these proposed laws, and I quote, veiled attempts by Zillow to preserve its market dominance. So from their point of view, this isn't about fairness at all. It's about Zillow trying to squash competition and take choices away from homeowners and their agents.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. This fight is no longer just a squabble between two companies. It has now spilled over into state governments, and they're stepping in to write new rules that could seriously change how real estate works for everyone.
And this isn't a one-off thing either. It's actually a growing trend. As you can see here, one state has already passed a law, and at least 4 others are looking at similar bills. This corporate feud is now actually setting legal precedents all across the country.
So, to really understand what these laws do, let's just zoom in on Wisconsin. They were the first state to pass a law, which they call Act 69, that tackles this issue head-on.
So here's how it works in Wisconsin. The default is public marketing. A property has to be out there for everyone to see within 1 business day. But, and this is the important part, a seller can choose to opt out. To do that, though, they have to physically sign a form that spells out all the potential risks of that choice.
And as you can see here, Wisconsin is definitely not alone. A very similar pattern is playing out in other states like Washington, Connecticut, and Hawaii. What's kind of wild is who's supporting these bills. In a lot of these cases, it's not just Zillow, it's the state realtor associations themselves, which might mean a bigger shift is happening across the entire industry.
Okay, we've talked about corporations, we've talked about politicians, but what does any of this actually mean for you? Whether you're thinking about buying a home someday or selling the one you're in right now.
This is really the bottom line, isn't it? How does all this high-level corporate and legal drama actually affect your wallet and your choices when you step into the housing market?
Well, for sellers, the impact is pretty direct. If you live in a state with one of these laws and you want to do a private listing, you might have to sign a form that literally says you understand the consequences, that fewer people will see your property, which could mean fewer offers, a lower final price, and maybe not getting the terms you want. It basically forces you to make a very conscious choice between privacy and potentially profit. So we're left with this really fundamental question. Are these new laws making the housing market more transparent and fair for everybody? Or are they taking away a perfectly valid choice from sellers, all while giving one big company a huge advantage? The answer to that is still being written one state law at a time.